Alright guys, welcome back to a new video. So in this video I'm going to show you how to access specific costs, and by doing that we can actually use it as a search functionality, and we will also be looking into how to actually convert the existing, let's say this one here is the router.get. We will convert it into async and await, and we will look into what the benefit of using that and how we're going to do it. And now without further ado, let's get started. So to right now we also have we already have this one. So let me open my Postman, so you can see that when I try to hit on the send button, you can see a list of this data. Right now we have 6 data inside our database, and now let me try to copy it. We haven't implemented this function yet, but just want to show you that we definitely get an error right here. So we are going to try to access that. So I'm going to create a new function inside this right here. So this is by default, we have this as an example that we have already implemented, and I'm going to create a new functions underneath right here. Alright, so now I have already created a router get to access this specific cost ID. So right here you can see that right here we use a colon, and whatever the name behind this, you can just give it a name, it doesn't matter at all. And right here I also try to request a cost ID, which is coming from here, and I just store it into a variable. By then for this one here, the cost is coming from the model, and I use functions to find by ID, just to find or looking for this specific cost ID. And I use this one here is the execute functions, and then when we get the result, we want to see if the result is actually successfully retrieved from the database. And I just put it as a status of 200, and this is the result in a JSON format. Otherwise, if there's no data that's gonna be found, then I put a status of 404, and the message says not valid entry found. And here this is just a catch function to catch an error if we found one. So now let's test it on the Postman and see if it's actually working. Okay, so here I have already opened the Postman. So right here I just copy this ID and paste it here to see if we can actually access this particular information. So here it is, we can access that. So here is the cost ID, and also this is the cost, the name of that, this is the tag, and this is also the date. And now let me show you, if I enter this one is not in the correct format, then what can we see? So here we see that the message is failed to access that particular directory, the particular cost ID, and you can see that the status is 500. And now let me try to change that back to here, and then what I can do, I can just put something else that's not exist in our database. So you can see that it tried to access the 404, which is the one that no valid entry found. So that's how we implement, or the way that I implement the if else statement right there. So here's the status of 200 that we can actually access that. Now let's go back to the code and see what else can we do. So here we already implement the cost ID, the features to access the specific cost ID, and this is the post request that we send the request to the database by creating a new data, and this is to get all of the data from the database. So next step here is to look into how we can actually use the async or await in our Node.js application here with MongoDB. Alright, so here is the article on using the async and await in Express with Node 11. Although this article is kind of old, but we look into, or we at least get some ideas on how to actually implement it on our application. So here you can see that it says the versions right here could not be the latest one. So we can see what's the benefit of using it, why are we using it. Okay, so here first things we can see that the way that we use it is actually less code. If we use the async and also await, then the way that we write code a lot less. So here is the one that without using the async, and also here this is the one that we use the async and await. You can see that the code that we need to write is quite different, and also better errors. So if you're familiar with the promises, you know that if a promise is rejected, then you will need to handle the error inside a catch. And if you are handling errors for both synchronous and asynchronous code, you're likely to duplicate the error handler. So here is an example of that. So here you can see they have like the catch inside a try right here, and there is another one here which is the catch. You can see that if we try to use both synchronous and asynchronous, then they are likely to duplicate the errors as seen in this example. So the way that we can use with the async and await, so here is the try and this is the catch. We don't need to actually use the catch inside the try when we use the await right here. So these the two examples that we can see, and there are more that we can find. So here's there's also an article for the benefit of using this, the advantages of using the async and await, and I'm gonna go into that. And now we can have a look here that we can use it within the Express, so that how it's gonna look like. And also this is the route. So this, by then we can use something like this. And right, this article is quite popular, and now let's see how can we actually do this inside our application. Alright, so first thing first, I'm going to start with this router.get to access all of the data from the database. So I'm going to write a code down here, and then we can compare the differences between the two codes. Okay, so you can see that this is the code that I just wrote, and this is the difference between the two. We use the async keyword right here, and just put it right there. And here is the cost dot find, but we are not going to do that. We instead start with the try, and also here's the catch to catch the error, which is the same as the previous one. We only need this part, by the way. And for this one here, we use an await keyword to actually just in front of this to find the cost.find functions, and we put it into a variable because we are trying to access all the costs. So I just put it into a const with the costs variable. Then whatever that we find or we get the information from the database, then we put it into that and show it to the result on say in this case the postman. And that's how we implement this using the await and async. And you can see comparing between the two code, this a lot less, and also we don't even need to use the execute function. So I'll show you why we don't require to use this function at all. So here's an article, the forum, the Slack overflow. So you can see that they mention it right here, someone from Slack overflow. So here's something to note, that when using the promises in the combination with the Mongoose async operation, is that async query are not the promises, and the query do return this one here, the deniable. And if you need to really use a real promises, then you should use this method. So the deniable here mean that when we try to look into our code, so here that's what it mean by that, because Mongoose is actually not a promises, so that's why we can get rid of using the execute function right here. Okay, so now we already done the first one. I'm going to comment this out and see if it's actually working on the Postman. So right here, I try to hit the send button. So you can actually see that result is actually the same as the previous one that we have already looked into. So next one here is I'm going to convert this into the async and also await. And finally, we will look into how to convert the post into the same one as well. Okay, alright, so I already convert from the normal one, which is use the dense, and here and convert into using the async. So the differences is quite similar to the previous one that we just looked into. And here you can see that this is, I just call it as the result, but right here I just call it as cost, and we store it into a cost variable without s, because this we try to access a specific or each one of the costs. And we can actually do it if we want to try to just call it like a result as the one that we did it like previously, but that should be fine. So now I'm going to comment this out and we try together see if this is actually working. So try to comment this part, and now let's go back to our Postman and see if this is working fine. Okay, so instead of the first result, I'm going to go with the last one right here, which is the mongo.6, and try to hit that. So here you can see that we can actually access this without any error. And let me try to get this ID just for testing. So here again we get the fifth one. So this worked as expected. So here for the last one here, the post request. So we have these cost objects. We try to whatever that coming from the Postman that we write, we store it into this as my cost. Then it going to post that and save, basically save that and post it in to the backend, and with the message saying that handling post request to this directory is successfully post, and this is the catch. And also I convert this into the format that we actually want. So here this everything should be the same as the previous one, and the only difference here is the try and try catch. So here I whatever that is here coming from the my cost.save, I just put it right there with the await keyword in front of that and store it into a variable called save cost. Okay, so this one should be or. And then here is the status of saying 201 successfully posted, and whatever that's here we just put it into the created cost. And if we catch an error, then we just put it right there just to show that that error message. So I'm gonna comment this one out. And now let's go back to our Postman and try to post a new data. Okay, so here is the body. I create a one which is the number 7 just to make sure that we got a different data. Then I try to hit this send button to see if we actually get the successful post successful. So here we need to change this to post and then see if we get the successful message. So here it says that handling to request to this here is actually successful. Now what we need to ensure that if it's actually successfully sent to the database, then we can just check it on the Mongo's Atlas dashboard. And now let's look into the database and see if the one that we just submitted is actually the correct one. Alright, so here it is. This is the one that we just submitted or try to create a new one, which is the Node.js Express MongoDB, number 7, and let me try one more time, which is the one with the number 8. Try to hit this button and we get successful result. Now let's go back and try to refresh it again. Alright, so here it is. We already got the one that we expected, and I think that's pretty much it for this tutorial. And in the next video, it should be the last one for this episode, we're going to look into how to update the data and also how to delete the data from our Node.js application right here. So we're going to create a function to update and also to delete, and that's pretty much it. And hopefully we will look into how to solve some of the issues such as the cost issue if we got a chance to do that. And see you guys in the next video.